Marilyn Monroe was an icon because people looked up to her as the most beautiful woman in the world, the most sexy woman in the world. With her blonde hair, always had a halo. She remained an icon.
And she did it with great success, which makes her one of the great iconic.
She came from nothing, became one of the idols of the entire film world.
Part of the appeal of Marilyn to this day is that in some ways she's that kind of classic Hollywood story that you rise from sort of mousy Norma Jean, you transform yourself into this blonde bombshell.
In other words,
she had the uncanny ability not just to be photogenic, but to actually understand that and use it in a way that very few of her peers have ever had.
There are very few Hollywood stars who are still an icon today after their death. She is.
An icon is a religious image from the 4th century, usually depicting Jesus, Mary, or angels.
Icons were originally religious symbolic pictures, of course, of our Lord Jesus, the Virgin Mary, and a variety of saints.
Religious imagery that would have been the most important aspect of a religion that a culture would worship.
They were very decorative, and they were used to represent all these characters for shrines or just be hung on the walls so that people could have their devotions without actually necessarily going to church. The idea of the icon was then passed on or hijacked by royal portrait painters. So they were official portraits of, say, Queen Elizabeth. The Tudors were very good at it. Holbein's portrait of King Henry VIII. They created a kind of image that the royal personage wanted to convey to the rest of the world, certainly the nation.
The Hollywood star system conveyed the power of their stars in much the same way, striking portraits for maximum attention.
Obviously, icons started out as religious imagery, but over the centuries and the decades, icons have become much more like pop culture figures.
It takes 3 elements to create an icon: the subject, the publicist, and the general public. Put those together, you'll create an image that will be sunk into the public imagination and their mind like fishhooks.
Marilyn Monroe was a natural at this from the start. Even in her earliest shots, Marilyn maximizes the possibilities of being iconic in the classical sense of the word.
With Marilyn Monroe, she is the ultimate blonde bombshell.
Marilyn has dyed her hair platinum, creating a halo look around her head. She starts to look straight into the camera in a most engaging way.
She wasn't born a natural blonde, so she sort of glows with this hair, and it became one of her trademarks.
Her skin has an opalescent effect in black and white. She has all the factors which create luminosity.
The eyes just get you, and just something about the whole package, the way she looks, just so instantly recognizable. Doesn't look like anybody else that's ever been born on this planet.
A great deal of it is to do with single images, and these single images may be either a photograph which has been specially posed, or it can actually be taken from one of the films. They'll freeze that frame and then put that out on magazine covers, on posters, and then that becomes the icon.
Somehow, she always conveys her unusual and charming personality as she poses. Her first iconic moment is the poster of the asphalt jungle in 1950. It is not often that the actress with the bit part gets to be the poster girl, but others do not have the appeal of Marilyn.
Cuba, that's not a bad idea.
Imagine me on this beach here in my green bathing suit. Yipe! I almost bought a white one the other day, but it wasn't quite extreme enough. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I really went in for the extreme, I would have bought a French one.
Let's not forget that her very first film, in which she had a tiny role in the asphalt jungle, and which she's perfectly good, but I mean, she's not by any means a star. Who's the main picture on the poster? It's Marilyn Monroe.
I had no idea you two knew each other.
This must be, at long last, our formal introduction.
until now. We've only met in passing.
That's how you met me, in passing.
In All About Eve, she's got a very small role, but it's really pivotal, and people took a lot of notice of her.
Well done. I can see your career rising in the East like the sun.
And he was absolutely right. And I thought, again, here's someone who's quite exceptional.
I don't want to make trouble. All I want is a drink.
She does sort of look like nobody else on the screen and just instantly charmed audiences and critics.
Her first tour de force is when she wears the sexy dress in Niagara.
The pink dress sticks out in my head as being so Marilyn and so iconic and such kind of a fashion moment. It's almost like one of the most underappreciated fashion moments in film, I think. I just think that pink dress, something about it, and the femme fatale, and it was one of the only film noir movies at the time that was in Technicolor, so to kind of put this bold, happy color, but yet she's, you know, basically hiring someone to murder her husband.
A kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. A kiss.
Ripped off by Madonna, it's been referenced by Lady Gaga, it's all across pop culture, this moment. It's such a fantastic moment on film, and it's one of the best musical sequences in film.
Best friend.
In the same year, Marilyn shows she can hold her own with the best of them. Lauren Bacall and Betty Grable in How to Marry a Millionaire.
Do you know who I'd like to marry? Who? Rockefeller. Which one? I don't care.
It's a story about Betty Grable, Lauren Bacall, and her all setting out to try and find a millionaire to marry.
Did you see this fellow I'm with? I saw him. What's he look like? Very nice for a one-eyed man. Is that all he's got?
The mirror sequence shows off her exquisite beauty, and this still shows how incredible she is in this dress.
It's only a minor film, but the playing was very, very good and very witty and very sophisticated. But the one who sort of comes out beyond Bacall and Grable is Marilyn.
Then came The 7-Year Itch, which took Marilyn's image into the stratosphere.
Let me just go put something on. I'll go into the kitchen and get dressed.
The kitchen?
Yes, when it's hot like this, you know what I do? I keep my undies in the icebox.
In The 7-Year Itch, she's playing one of her classic ditzy blondes, and you think back to this film now, and it's an iconic moment in film when she's wearing that white dress, standing over the subway grate, and it billows up around her.
Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
It was shot, first of all, in the New York street. It was a deliberately posed item. It was a scene that clearly caused a huge furore at the time. I mean, people crowded around to watch it happen.
We're here to make The 7-Year Itch.
Location shots on the 7-Year Itch?
uh-huh.
That's your latest picture, right?
Yes, I'm looking forward to it very much.
It caused an absolute furore. Joe DiMaggio attended the shoot and, of course, was very upset about it. It was then redone in the studio under more controlled conditions for the actual film.
The studio knew what they had with a shot like this, and they blew it up to great height. And she was, of course, embarrassed that this moment of her dress being blown up became this gigantic poster, and she wasn't quite comfortable with that.
I think it's very nice, but I'd rather it for me.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
That image is not just famous as a film image. That became one of the most recognizable images of the 20th century. It's right up there with the moon landing almost, which is just unheard of, but that just really caught the imagination of the public. There's a reason that's an iconic image.
By 1956, Marilyn Monroe had already become an international icon. Bus Stop is the first film role that Marilyn takes after her time at the Actors Studio. It is a grittier role than before. Yet in her green outfit, Marilyn is the epitome of the sexy, soulful singer with a touch of sadness.
That old black magic
With Bus Stop, Marilyn Monroe was wanting to show her more serious side. She had been studying acting at the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg in New York. She really wanted to show people she could do more than this dumb blonde, ditzy sort of showgirl characters.
She's got a vulnerability that really, really comes out. She manages to carry it off magnificently, and I think Bus Stop is one of the films that shows her up as a really good actress.
That's mine. Hey.
She's just a gal who works in the salon.
Look at her gleaming there.
Starts
Pale and white.
Once again in Bus Stop, we see Marilyn Monroe in another iconic outfit, which is this green, sort of Basque, sultry nightclub singer outfit, and she just is a knockout. She looks magnificent, and that stuck in people's minds as well, just the look of her in this film.
Marilyn decides that she wants to exude a different image, and for that she pays for The Prince and the Showgirl to be made and hires Laurence Olivier.
So Laurence Olivier and Marilyn will co-star in The Sleeping Prince, a former stage hit to become a movie in color for fascinating Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn wasn't just a film star, she actually made films herself. She produced them anyway, so to a certain extent, she was responsible for creating her own iconography. For example, the idea that behind Prince and the Showgirl, because she wanted to star with Laurence Olivier because she admired him so much, was more or less her. She produced the film, she looks terrific in it.
I'm gonna fall in love with you. Because I always do.
Always?
Both times. So...
Once again, Marilyn cuts a pose in her white dress.
She does that kind of Pygmalion thing that Audrey Hepburn pulls off, where she starts off in one mode and then becomes more and more glamorous and more sort of smart and rises to the occasion. And actually she rises to the occasion rather magnificently, given the fact that she had a lot of flack while making that film for, her late arrival on set and all the things that we know that we associate with Marilyn. But let's not forget, she was actually paying for it. So I think she probably should have been allowed a little more leeway than she got.
Some Like It Hot gave Marilyn a different image. Even though she looks sexy, it makes her smile because she is such a comedienne in this picture.
One of the most iconic images that she has is as Sugar Cane in Some Like It Hot. When she walks along the station platform, for example, and the steam spurts out.
Look at that! Look how she moves.
That is one of the most iconic moments of the film.
I think it's my favorite performance that she gives, partly just because the film is really funny. You've got Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon. There's a really good chemistry between the three of them.
Terribly sorry.
It's okay, I was scared it was Sweet Sue. You won't tell anybody, will you?
Billy Wilder thought it was too much. She was so late. She had to take so many takes. She couldn't remember her lines. But he also said, I wish there were actresses like this now, with causing me so much trouble and being so damn good.
I wanna be loved by you.
The other moment in the film, which I think is one of the great iconic moments, is the time she sings I Want to Be Loved by You. And at the moment when she does boo-boo-be-doop,
Boop-boop-be-doo.
there's a little dip, which is a sort of half bunny dip. And I think just that little sequence is yet another of her iconic moments.
Ba-deedly-deedly-deedly-dum. Boop-boop-be-doop.
In Let's Make Love, Marilyn becomes the iconic French femme fatale. Even though this was shot in Hollywood, it looks like a French movie.
While tearing off a game of golf, I may make a play for the caddy.
The sweater pick is another Marilyn moment, and her joie de vivre is evident in the film.
If you mean what you say, money doesn't mean anything to me. I get jobs. Will you forget all that?
Oh, my dear girl. How long I have waited to hear that.
Marilyn has escaped from the difficulties of life with Arthur Miller to star with Yves Montand.
I brought them to East Hampton just on vacation. She had had a little relationship with somebody, Yves Montand, who very wisely, his wife showed up and said, à notre maison, let's go home. And Arthur found out about it and was very upset. I watched a lot of it. Marilyn looked at me as though, what's happening here? Just because I had a little affair with somebody. I said, I didn't measure your affairs with anybody. But then Arthur found out about it, and it didn't make good music.
A different mood from Marilyn. At last, she is a straight actress under John Huston's direction.
Why are you killing me?
Just stand aside, honey.
Okay, you won. All right, you won. You won.
Let's go then, rope. Get out of here.
He does.
Follow him. Shut him down here.
The Misfits is Marilyn's last on-screen performance that was finished and released. John Huston directs this film. It was said to be a pretty unhappy set to work on.
Now, Marilyn, of course, was up against the best: Clark Gable, Montgomery Clift, Eli Wallach, with a script by her husband, Arthur Miller.
How much you want for him? I'll pay you. I'll give you $200. Is that enough?
The very fact that she was paying for the film was appreciated probably only by John Huston, and so he could put up with all the behavior that Marilyn was exhibiting at the time.
I think you're the saddest girl I ever met.
First man ever said that. I'm usually told how happy I am.
The real problem was actually her husband, Arthur Miller, who had written the script and felt that he was being overshadowed by Marilyn. So she had a very unhappy time on the film. And yet she manages to draw from herself, or Huston manages to draw from her, one of her most intriguing performances.
That's because you make a man feel happy.
I don't feel that way about you, Kay.
It's definitely seen as another strong role for her.
It's one of her most human performances. There's a depth there that, had she lived, I think would have developed.
This was her last film, and it would only be 18 months before she was dead.
In May 1962, Marilyn takes the stage at Madison Square Garden to sing Happy Birthday, Mr. President to John F. Kennedy. Again, this is another iconic moment in pop history.
She just breathed the song so that, again, like all of the really strong images of her, it seemed as if she was singing directly to him and there was no one else in the room.
Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
It was one of those moments, it's historical moments, actually, historical iconography, because it just went around the world. It zapped around the world that whole evening.
Marilyn had become increasingly dependent on alcohol and prescription pills. In 1962, she began filming Something's Got to Give.
George Cukor was lined up to direct Marilyn in Something's Gotta Give. She was going through lots of health problems, emotional problems. In fact, in sort of 35 days of shooting, she showed up 11 times. She was getting ready to maybe go back to restart it when she died, but obviously this film was never made.
Marilyn would be found dead at her home in California on the morning of August 5th, 1962. This headline was sent all over the world. When Andy Warhol heard the news, he created the Marilyn image, probably the most iconic of them all.
One of the most important moments of her iconic status was when Andy Warhol took the picture from Niagara and turned it into a silkscreen print. I mean, he did many. He did well over 20 versions of this in different colors. Basically, what Warhol was doing was creating his own set of icons. They were exactly the same as the religious icons of Eastern Europe and the Orthodox Church. Each one has its own individual character, so that you could never tire of looking at them all.
You still see that Warhol, Marilyn paintings and screen prints all over the world. It's still such an iconic image because she's captured at this beautiful moment. Marilyn never gets old. That's the other thing. We never saw old Marilyn. She died at age 36. The fact that we have this screen print of her as a young woman, I think only sort of adds to her myth and her legend.
Marilyn Monroe has become one of the 20th century's most enduring icons.
It's a sad fact that when a star dies young, they live in the memory longer. There is no doubt in my mind that Marilyn Monroe is a greater icon because she died young.
We knew she was a troubled soul. She said she was a troubled soul. She always admitted it. But she remained an icon for the rest of her life. And not only that, she's still an icon today.
You see posters and pictures of her. Young women are discovering her. They want to emulate her in terms of makeup and fashion. She's become a complete icon.
Of all the blonde bombshells that we think of, Marilyn is head and shoulders above the rest. She wasn't just a platinum blonde, she was a plutonium blonde.